everybody, I'm Josh McQueen and I'm hoping you're having a great start to your semester. So, the chapter I read was chapter 2 of Faith and Founders of the American Republic. The main idea of this chapter is that scholars are too prone to neglect the significant influence of Christianity generally and the Reformed theological and attendant political traditions on the founding generation. So it's that scholars are too focused on the founders not utilizing Christianity when founding the United States. So more often than not, they have a tendency to actually treat America's founders as non-religious people who embraced a rationalist approach to politics and produced secular documents, being the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. However, this author says that Calvinism is one view that is specifically of note that was neglected by historians who examine this era. If a religious view is interpreted, it usually isn't Calvinism. Often it is deism, or it's through the eyes of a Southern evangelical gentlemen such as Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and George Washington. Or it's through the eyes of men born outside of the United States, such as Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Paine, and sometimes even through the eyes of Ben Franklin, who spent a majority of his time in Europe, at least the last 35 years of his life. So the author argues that this is an improper way to examine this era because these American leaders are not actually representative of many American leaders who were firmly rooted in the Reformed tradition during that time period, and even not representative of American public as a whole. So the author actually estimates that the Reformed tradition was the religious heritage of 3/4 of the American people in 1776 at the time of the American founding. Others who weren't involved in the Reformed traditions oftentimes were closely related to people who were or knew much about the Reformed traditions. So even if you weren't Reformed, you kind of knew about Reformed traditions. Throughout this chapter, the development of Reformed or Calvinist political thought from John Calvin to the American founding is traced. Although it is nearly impossible to trace intellectual influence because how can you trace that? But if it's not written down. But when examined from this new perspective, it changes how America's founders and their documents are viewed. So various other books and articles tackle topics related to this. Some address the Lockean view that often treats America's founders as deists who embraced a rationalist approach and made secular documents. And then one article by William Redinger, which was entitled The American Revolution, Romans 13, and the Anglo Tradition of Reformed Protestant Resistance Theory on JSTOR, attempts to address all historical views of that era in order to allow one to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the Lockean view and the Lockean Reform view. My bibliography I read a Michael D. Breidenbach article, Consuelarism and the American Founding, then William Redinger's article, The American Revolution, Romans 13, the Anglo Tradition of Reformed Protestant Resistance Theory, and then also the chapter 2 of the book. So, thank you guys.